Hello everyone, this is Jason Merkel with Horizon Hobby, and we're here today at the world-famous William Bennett RC Flying Field in Las Vegas, the former home of the Tournament of Champions, and we're here today with two really awesome models. This is the E-flite FW190A 1.5m, we like to call our finest Focke-Wulf yet, and we've got the E-flite P-51D Mustang 1.5m, our mightiest Mustang yet. So these are similar class models. Mustang's been out for a little while now. The FW190 is joining it here recently, and what's awesome about that is that now we've got two kind of complementary foes and nemesis, so to speak. We're really excited about this because it's actually the first time we've ever had an E-flite branded FW190 in our lineup. So many years ago, some guys may remember we've had some other ones in some of our other brands, but what's exciting about this is basically it's the pinnacle of bind and fly, plug and play warbirds that we've ever had. It is 1.5m span, as you guys can see, exactly the same span for both models. They do actually use the same motor and the same ESC, different propellers of course. The biggest difference in the two of course is the size of the prop, the diameter, the pitch of the props. One is a 4-blade, one is a 3-blade. They both have the 100-amp Spektrum Avion Smart ESC installed, so the plug and play versions have the ESCs installed. And then they're both set up for 6S batteries. So all the way from a 6S 3200, kind of on the low end. Now, if you do fly a lightweight 6S 3200 like this one, you may have to slide a little bit further forward on the tray and or add some nose weight, depending on your CG. Or of course, very, very popular 6S 5000, anywhere from a 30C up to 100C. This is probably the sweet spot, the most popular battery for most people. Good flight time, good performance. A lot of guys already have these batteries. All the way up to a 6S, this is the 7000. So I've flown both models with this battery. I do really like this battery. It's a little heavier, you do feel the weight, but you do get a little bit extra flight time. And what's really nice is I get anywhere from, depending on how I fly, 5 to 8 minutes solid. Sometimes up to 10 minutes if I'm just going around and doing some low speed cruising. And a little bit of throttle management here or there. Everybody's gonna be a little bit different depending on their conditions, depending on their flying style, depending on the performance of their battery. But with the 6S 5000, typical flight times are right around 5 to 7 minutes for most people. What's also exciting about it is it does have, again, our smart technology. We have the smart ESC already installed. We do have the plug-and-play versions, which don't have a receiver, but we have the bind-and-fly basic versions of both, which include a Spektrum AR637TA smart receiver. That's a full-range telemetry receiver. So by plugging the ESC into that particular receiver, as long as you have a compatible Spektrum Airwear-equipped transmitter, all the way from a DX6E all the way up to an IX20 and everything in between, including the new NX series of radios, of course, any of those radios are going to give you telemetry data on your transmitter, a whole bunch of really incredible information. You'll get motor RPM, motor current, you'll get ESC temperature, and then, and all that, you get all of that even with a standard battery. So you also get overall pack voltage if you use a standard battery. But if you install a smart battery, either a G1, which this is, or a G2 series battery, you will get additional data. This is really cool. You'll get the temperature of the battery while you're flying. You'll also get individual cell voltages while you're flying. So with all this telemetry data, you can do a variety of things. You can set up with a smart battery a low voltage alert based on one cell. So if one cell goes below a certain voltage threshold, your transmitter can tell you that. If you have a not smart battery, you can set up an overall pack voltage if it drops below a certain level. You can kind of use that as a precursor to the LVC and the ESC. So when you get down to X level of voltage, then you get that alert at your transmitter rather than flying around either based on your timer alone or, you know, unfortunately maybe flying all the way down to the LVC of the ESC and not having enough power to get back to the runway. So smart technology is phenomenal for a lot of reasons. My number one absolute favorite feature though of smart technology, when you've got the smart ESC, the smart receiver, and a compatible transmitter, when you plug in a battery, if it's below, and you can set this threshold, it could be 4 volts per cell, it could be 3.8 volts per cell, and that's just going to add up to times 6 the total pack voltage. But what's nice about that is if you ever go over to your flight box, you get talking to your buddies, you kind of forget, did I charge, is this a charge battery? Or maybe you don't even think about it, you just grab a battery from the wrong pile or you didn't mark it, and you plug it in. If that battery is below that voltage per cell, so in this case, I like to have mine set around 4 volts because that's about 75–80% charged. If I've got a battery at that voltage per cell and I plug it in, that transmitter is going to alert me and say, this battery is not fully charged. Are you sure you want to fly? And I can tell you for a fact, it has saved me at least one time so far. And so I can guess it's probably going to save some other guys out there, potentially a very embarrassing situation, potentially a crash. But more importantly, it's just a big step up from where we were in the past, not having that information available to us. And I know some guys say, hey, I've been doing it flying for all these years and never had that information. And so have I. But now that I have it, guys, I can't imagine going back without it. So, real quick additional thing, because we have the bind and fly basic versions, that's what these both are, with the AR637TA receiver installed, we do of course have AS3X technology, which is 3-axis gyros to smooth things out. It's not flying the airplane for you, it's not fighting you. When you move the stick, you're in command. But when you're not moving the stick, if it's a little bit blustery out, if you're dealing with some other different conditions, thermals and crosswinds and things like that, it just keeps things smoother for you. It reduces your workload as a pilot, and my real favorite benefit in a scale airplane, it makes it look more real, because the airplane's not bouncing around like a lightweight model does. Now, these aren't particularly lightweight models. They're both similar weights. FW is a little bit heavier for some reasons we'll get into here in a minute. But what's really nice is with that AS3X technology in there, they just feel so locked in. And I've flown it with AS3X off, and I've flown it with AS3X on. Something that's also really cool is very recently we released an update for our receivers that allows you to, number one, unlock them. So the 637TA that originally came in the P-51 was kind of locked down to this model for a short time. That wasn't intentional for a long period of time. Late last year, 2020, we did come out with an update which allows you to make small adjustments to the AS3X gains and things like that. You can also change and set up different flight modes. You can have a SAFE Select on and off. You can have AS3X, and you can even have AS3X off, all on one 3-position switch that you program through the forward programming in the transmitter. As a really, really awesome feature. So I know some guys are pretty anti-gyro, I get it, but if you fly an airplane with it and without, you will be surprised, even on a calm day, the difference in the way that it feels. So I highly recommend, if you want to try it for yourself, you can. Most people, don't worry about that. All you need to do is set up either AS3X only by binding the receiver just like you normally do, or you can then choose to activate the optional use SAFE Select technology. So SAFE Select is bank angle limits, pitch angle limits, and self-leveling when you let go of the stick. So obviously SAFE Select is beneficial for a pilot with less experience, especially if you're trying to land in a crosswind or you're just not comfortable with the airplane. We'll get to the experience level you should have before you fly these models here in a minute. But the big thing is that with SAFE Select as an option, and I'm an experienced pilot, I don't need SAFE Select to fly. But I always bind with it activated. The reason why is if I ever get in trouble or do something I probably shouldn't have done, like fly through the sun and lose orientation, I can flip SAFE on, I can bury the stick in the corner, and the plane will just do a circle until I'm ready and I let go of the stick, it goes back to level, and I regain my orientation, or I've had gnats in my face or a dog barking at my feet. So SAFE has some other tangible benefits beyond helping a less experienced pilot. And so again, it is optional use. You don't have to use it. But I will say this, if you're going to use SAFE Select, these are both 6-channel models. They have your primary flight controls, throttle, rudder, elevator, aileron. They also have retractable landing gear and flaps. It's a total of 6 channels required. But if you want to have SAFE Select on a separate channel, you then need a 7th channel so you can turn that on and off separately. Now, a DX6E or a DX6, not enough channels to do that. The new NX6, on the other hand, does have that additional kind of 6.5, almost 7th channel, which allows you to turn SAFE Select on and off, even with a 6-channel transmitter. Of course, now my all-time everyday go-to transmitter, my favorite one, is the NX8. I like having that additional channel beyond the 7 channels, and so I've got the SAFE Select on a separate switch, which is really nice because I can turn it on and off as need be. And so it's very important that you do have at least a 7-channel radio if you want to use that optional use SAFE Select. So it's awesome because all that's pre-programmed, it's already done, and I mentioned before that update, so you can unlock the receivers. Then you can also then potentially, if you need to down the road, you can take these receivers out of these models and put them into other models. You can either flash them so they're completely erased, so there's no gyros. You can program them for other airplanes. So kind of a very nice kind of progressive feature. We're continuing to update our smart ecosystem constantly to make sure that it has as many features and functionalities and as easy to use as possible. And I gotta say, it's a lot easier than it used to be when you had to pull out your phone and a Bluetooth adapter or pull out your laptop and try to program AS3X and SAFE Select to the field. Really nice that you don't have to worry about that. So let's talk a little bit more about the models individually. Again, both 1.5 meter spans, similar class, similar power systems, and obviously overall they fly somewhat similar because they are somewhat similar in kind of layout and kind of overall function. So I feel like they fly both fantastic, to be honest. I love the way they fly. I've flown them both quite a bit now. They have very, very similar high-speed handling, so just really locked in and precise, especially with that AS3X on there. Very capable of typical warbird maneuvering. Also a little bit more aggressive aerobatics than you would kind of expect a full-scale warbird to do. But on top of that, they both have really good slow-speed handling. So I am really impressed every time I fly these, how slow I can fly them. I like to do a bunch of fast flybys of the field. Everybody loves that. But then I also love to throttle back, put the flaps down, and just cruise around nice and slow and low and easy, so on and so forth. So the really cool thing about the FW190 though is that it does have, you guys can see, the scale kind of long, extra long length retractable landing gear. In the past, a lot of models of the FW190 that people have come out with had short landing gear. Now, the long landing gear looks awesome, looks scale. There are some complications that do come along with that. And so for that reason, this airplane and even the Mustang are not recommended for first-time warbird pilots. We strongly recommend you have at least a couple of warbirds under your belt, tail dragger warbirds in particular. So, you know, a T-28 is a great warbird trainer, but it's tricycle landing gear. But something like our E-flite P-51D Mustang 1.2m is a great kind of stepping stone to getting into either one of these models. They both have somewhat similar ground handling characteristics, but there's some subtle differences. You have to kind of be on the rudder, both on takeoff and after landing, especially on rollout, to make sure that you don't ground loop, you don't have it go off the runway, you don't have it spin around or do something unexpected. But again, you do have that really awesome scale landing gear on this one. We do have shock absorbing struts on it. We have scale sized wheels and tires. We have ball bearings in the wheels. We have the shock absorbing struts that are all metal. We've got really beefy retracts, really beefy retract mounts. Something that we learned kind of from the P-51 that we brought over to the FW is we took those mounts and we beefed them up, made them larger, took it all the way through to the top of the wing. So the top of the wing skin, there is actually plastic there where the gear mount is. So that just makes it all a lot more solid, a lot more secure, which is important. We have these longer legs. You can get a lot more pressure and force on them. So it's important we had that kind of beefed up. The retract units themselves are kind of beefed up so they can also handle a little bit more of the, you know, kind of pressure that's going to be put on them by that long gear leg. You can fly both of these models off of grass. You can fly both of them off of pavement. It is better to fly both off of grass if you can, if you have that option. You can see some of our other videos, we show a little bit of both. On pavement, they handle well. The catch is that you do have to deal a little bit more with the yaw on the ground, in particular for takeoff and for landing, especially after rollout. So the FW190, it does come with some very hard tires out of the box. We did that intentionally. We tested very hard tires. We tested very soft tires. We were trying to find a tire that worked well on most surfaces. What we found was that the harder tire works better on smooth surfaces like this paved runway. The reason for that is with soft tires, it would kind of slide and skip and bounce and it would always end up on the wingtips. So with the harder tires, although it's a little more prone to potentially bouncing if you don't sit down smooth, once you do sit down smooth, it can kind of slide and skid if it needs to, rather than grab and flip up. There are, however, optional softer tires available separately. Tires are about $10. You pop them off of the stock hubs, you pop the softer tires on. Those are available for guys that would prefer to try those either on a hard surface or maybe you're flying on grass and you would prefer to have that little extra cushion. Obviously the grass itself adds some cushion, but it is kind of nice to have that additional softer tire available separately as well. We don't have that option available for the P-51 at the moment. Some guys have changed those tires out to a different set of wheels and tires because they prefer the softer depending on the surface they fly from. But what's nice about the stock tires is they look really good. They're both treaded tires. So they look scale, they function very, very well. It's a very nice touch. Now, we do not have a retractable tail wheel on the FW. That is something the full scale did have, but it didn't retract all the way. It only retracted part way. It's a little bit complex to put that kind of mechanism to a small tail section like this. So we decided to forego it. It is a steerable tail wheel. It does have a separate push rod from the rudder servo, so you can adjust that mechanically so it will track straight, which is something I strongly recommend doing. Anytime you have a tail dragger warbird, take some time before your first flight or after your first flight, set it up so it tracks well on the ground mechanically. Make sure that when you push it and it rolls out, that it's not yawing one way or the other. I typically do it after my first flight. I take off, I fly around, I trim it out in the air. That way my rudder is trimmed if needed. And then when I land, I push the airplane on the ground and I let it roll out. And if it goes to one side or the other, I mechanically adjust the linkage for the tail wheel to make sure it tracks as straight as possible. That reduces my workload as a pilot on the ground for takeoff and on the ground after landing. I gotta tell you, it's well worth the effort. Other things you can check is to make sure that your wheels aren't in too much toe out or too much toe in on your main gear. Usually there's flat spots on the shafts to prevent that from happening, but it's something that's worth double checking to kind of make your life a little bit easier on takeoffs and landings. But overall, it is an extra scale model. Tons and tons of scale surface detail. You probably can't see it in this video, but you can see it in the photos on our website. We have tons of rivets, panels, all these just different details that we couldn't get into a smaller model. We're able to get them into this 1.5 meter class model. So we've got not only a bunch of extra scale details on the surface, we also have a lot of extra scale bits. We've got the guns, we've got the pitot tube, we've got some other kind of things sticking off the canopy and off the tail here that are just, it takes it to a whole nother level. That's why we call it extra scale. We also have extra scale functional features, of course, which is the retractable landing gear. Again, this one has the retractable mains, does not have the retractable tail wheel, but it does still then have split flaps, so functional flaps, and it has navigation lights. So we've got the two on the wingtips, but we also then on the FW added one to the rudder. So it's got a bright white light out here on the tail. So it's a really nice step up overall. Something else that we learned from the P-51 was that it's nice to have a bigger battery hatch, the bigger the better, but also a lot of times that edge right around your battery hatch, both on the fuselage and on the hatch itself, a lot of times when that's a painted edge, it chips the paint off. And that just doesn't last long, doesn't look good. So what we did is we spent the extra time and effort to actually wrap the entire edge in plastic. So this is covered in plastic, the edge here, the edge around here is plastic, this tab right here is plastic. It really is a nice step up, even from what we had on the Mustang. We learned some things from this one and we brought them over to the FW. So we've got some of those extra plastic parts on there, which makes it a little bit more durable. It's probably gonna last longer and look longer for a longer amount of time, which is a really nice touch. And then in this model, like our other P-51 here, we do have the removable battery tray. I know some guys don't like this. I'll admit, at first I didn't like it either. Now, the FW actually has a wider fuselage and a larger hatch, so it's less necessary. The P-51 is very narrow. You can't really get your hands, and admittedly I have small hands, you can't get your hands in there to put the battery in and out. Even if we made the hatch longer, which would have made the fuselage less robust than it is now, it would have been very hard to get a battery in and out. So this tray is nice because you can pull it out, you can stick the battery in the tray, slide the tray in and lock it into position. In the case of the FW190, when I fly the 7000, I have it a little bit further back on the tray. When I fly the 5000, I have it hanging off the front of the tray just a little bit. When I fly the 3200, I have it all the way forward. And even then, it could use a little nose weight if you're gonna fly with that battery all the time. But it is kind of nice to have that tray to be able to work on attaching the battery to it and strapping it down before sliding it into the model. It is a very nice touch. So we'll stick that back in there. But yeah, a lot of really just kind of great little things that we learned from the P-51, which is also an awesome model in a lot of respects, but we really stepped things up. We also made construction assembly as easy as possible. So out of the box, it just bolts together. There's no glue required at all for assembly. You have 2 bolts to put the horizontal stabs on, which are 2 pieces. You then have 4 bolts to put the wing onto the fuselage, the center section of the wing onto the fuselage. So it drops straight down, unlike the Mustang, which kind of had to go into a cavity, kind of work back, and the alignment wasn't as precise every time. This one lines up perfect every time. Has the hands-free connection system, so if you do decide to take the center section on and off all the time, you don't have to fiddle with a bunch of wires. You've got the lights, the aileron servos, the flap servos, all those go into the hands-free, version 2 hands-free connection system, which is a better design than we had in the past, which makes sure that those contacts are always as good as possible. And so you have reliable connections there. You don't have to worry about those not working right. And then, like the Mustang, we made it a 3-piece wing. So you guys can see, I just pulled off the outer wing section. And this may not look like a very big piece, and it's not. But when you pull it off both sides, now the fuselage, the center section, which has a landing gear in it, is almost the same span as the horizontal stab. It makes it way easier to transport this. You can put this with the wing panels off in the back seat of most sedans, and then have the wing panels right there with you. It is super duper easy to transport. It's pretty fantastic. And it has the hands-free connection system in here as well. It has these snaps, so you don't have to have fasteners, and these are replaceable if you ever damage them or need to replace them down the road. But you can see it's so simple. You just slide it in. Oh, and by the way, we added some plastic here on the joint to make sure that this lasts longer and does not have the paint chip as well. So real nice touch. You can see, just slide it in there and then snaps into place, done, ready to fly. Super duper easy to transport, very easy to store, very easy to assemble. I had this together in about 20 minutes. It took me more time to double check that mechanically all my surfaces were centered, to set up my radio, than it took to put the airplane together. So really, really cool. One last thing, which you won't be able to see in this video, we do have the simulated cooling fan, just like the full scale had. But not only is it simulated, it's on the back of the spinner plate here. It actually does help cool the motor. And then on top of that, we took the time to update the prop design. It is a multi-piece prop, and it has 2 bolts per blade. Those bolts go through the spinner backplate into a metal plate that's on the back of that that's threaded. It is a really, really strong, robust, reliable setup. You're never gonna have to worry about those prop blades coming off. It's gonna work perfectly. If you ever damage them, you can replace 1 blade at a time, which is kind of nice. So I know some guys prefer to have maybe the option for a regular spinner, regular prop. This is a fully scale and integrated setup to this model, but it works really, really darn well. So that is the FW190. Let's move over to the P51. A lot of guys already know this model well, so I won't go into quite as many details. Very similar setup overall for assembly. The wing bolts on, the stab bolts on, the prop is multi-piece. No glue is required to assemble it, other than if you want to glue your little antenna in here. Now, the P51 differs in a few ways. One is it does have the 3-piece wing here, which is a very nice touch. It does have the retractable main gear. It does also have the scale location retractable tail wheel. So that's kind of a nice difference from the FW. It does have the navigation lights on the wingtips, but it does not have the navigation light in the rudder. Not a huge deal, but again, we kind of traded. Rather than have the retractable tail wheel in the FW, put the landing light or the navigation light back there, but we do have the retractable tail wheel, which I got to say on a P51, having the tail wheel in a scale location and making it retractable is a big, big step up. So again, it does have the large hatch here, relatively large hatch, but the fuselage is narrower than the FW, so you do have that battery tray inside there, which is a big help on this particular model. Slides the battery forward, helps you get your CG right. Also, again, works with the 3200 up to the 7,000 milliamp battery, which is a nice touch. And so again, like I said before, guys, these models are not particularly difficult to fly. The biggest difference here is that you do need to have at least some experience flying a warbird. If you don't have experience flying a warbird, strongly recommend that you start with something else like our P-51 1.5m, or beyond that, there's some other tail dragger warbirds out there which will do a good job of preparing you for these models. But I think it's very, very important that you have at least many flights on a tail dragger warbird, even if it's a smaller size, before you're ready for models like this. They fly awesome. They have great handling characteristics overall, but the ground handling is a little bit more difficult with these particular models, especially on a smooth surface. So be sure to check out some of our videos. Check out some of the videos that some of the other guys that have done out there, Pilot Ryan, Brian Phillips, so on and so forth. These guys have all done a great job, the RC Sailors, of showing you guys how the airplane flies, giving you some hints and tips along the way. Again, the assembly, very, very simple. Both of these models, 1.5 m span, very similar 6S power systems, available both plug and play and bind and fly. And it's nice because now we have the very popular P-51, and then probably one of its most popular or most well-known nemesises and foes. So yeah, we're really excited to have both in the lineup. Be sure to check out our website for more information. We do have both of these available globally. By the time you guys will see this video, you can pre-order the FW190, and then they should be available probably by early February of 2021. Mustangs, of course, are already available most places and very, very well known and very, very popular. A lot of guys will tell you they fly fantastic. Yeah, so we're really excited to have both of these in the lineup. And again, check out our website, check out our YouTube channel for more videos on both of these models. Thank you.